Hi, welcome to the School Community Huddle with Ana Martinez. Today we have two special guests, and we're going to be focusing on 7th and 8th grade. You want to introduce yourself and what grade level or content areas you teach?
I teach middle school. My name's Tony. I teach middle school humanities. I also coach sports as well. So middle school English teacher and I coach sports.
Hi, I am Ashley. I teach 7th grade humanities, which is English and history.
Okay. Welcome. So we are doing this podcast after we've been in virtual learning or distance learning for about a week or 2 weeks. So we have a really good, fresh perspective for all you parents of middle schoolers. And today our focus is 7th and 8th grade. So briefly, what are some typical characteristics of a 7th and or 8th grader?
So I work at a middle school, high school. So typically once they've gotten to 7th grade, they're pretty confident, right? Like when the new 6th graders come in, they're a little like shy, timid. Sometimes it takes the 6th graders a whole year to get acclimated. Like the 7th graders come in and they are like, okay, we've done this, we've got this. So they come in confident. 8th graders are like, okay, like we're ready for high school. We've been here for 2 years in middle school. Like let's get ready for high school. So I think 7th and 8th grade, they're definitely more confident like in their schedule and their friend system, and just ready to like, not necessarily push buttons, but they're like ready to see like what are their teachers' like expectations and what are some things they can maybe get away with and do. So that's my experience.
And yeah, I think to build on that, I think 7th and 8th graders, they really want to find, they are very social and they want to find their niche. Like, am I an art kid or sports or kind of obviously doing well in school? But I think at that age, kids are trying to figure out kind of who they are, where they fit into the whole social system, I guess. But yeah, I think middle school, they're just trying to figure out who they are, trying to figure out who their friends are. So I think, yeah, that's the main features of that age group, I'd say.
That's such a good point. Like middle schoolers are such social beings. Like they create community, they learn through their friends, through groups. And a lot of the way we structure middle school, or at least the intention and the new research is showing like groups of 3, 4 actually help the learning. So I'm wondering, like those characteristics you just named, did you see any differences in the characteristics now that you were engaging with them virtually? Like, were those similar characteristics or they were different?
I think that definitely when we talk to students, like I know I taught this summer as well. We did kind of a summer bridge program. So I was able to teach some of the students that I was going to have this year and get to know them this summer in a smaller setting, which was good. But I think kids definitely want to connect all the time. They'll show up early to their meeting. They want to show up 10, 15 minutes early. We had to say, okay, you don't need to be 15 minutes early, but kids want to show up early. They want to stay after to really connect. So I think definitely during the learning time focused on what's happening, but I think there's definitely that need during this time for kids set aside time for them to connect, because that's definitely something that a lot of parents reach out and said that, oh, I'm worried my son or daughter is a little more withdrawn, and they want to make sure that they're having time to connect and interact with their peers as well.
Wow, so you're finding, well, I'm sorry to interrupt. You're finding that these middle schoolers are actually getting to class early just to be in community.
Yeah, so I know we use Google Meet. So with Zoom, it doesn't start until the person's there. We use Google Meet. So I know we had to have a conversation with, oh, you cannot be in the Google Meet, 15 minutes before class. But kids were literally like, I want to get there just so I can chat with my friend or say hello. And definitely when they see their friend's face on the camera, they get super excited. I mean, it's been months and everyone remembers being in middle school, their best friend in middle school. If you didn't see them for 3 days, it was the end of the world. It's been months. So I think that for sure there's that need to connect, which myself and other teachers recognized right away.
I actually have the exact opposite experience with my 7th graders. So I feel like maybe the first day they're really nervous because mostly, there's a new teacher and then they kind of like catch on really quickly. What I've noticed this whole week is we just ended our first week. They're super shy. They don't want to turn on their camera. Like they're really hesitant to type in the chat box. And so I have told them like, because I use Zoom, like when I get in, I have like my Google slide deck up, and on the whiteboard, it'll have something where they can type in the chat box. But what I've done is once we go into asynchronous time where they're like doing independent work, I'll say, if you guys want to log off and do it by yourself, you're fine. If you want to stay, let me know which breakout room you want to be into. And so that's when it's like, I want to be in so-and-so with so-and-so. And when I peek into the breakout rooms, that's where I see their cameras on. And so I've been trying to make sure that I give them that choice at certain points, like who do you want to hang out with in the breakout rooms? If you want to stay in chat, like that's fine. Make sure you're staying on topic. So I think they are wanting to be social. They just don't know how to in a virtual setting. So really building, I guess, that like sense of normalcy of like, I know it's weird to look at your friend on the camera, but like they're the same person. We're doing the same things. It's just like through a computer. So kind of pushing them if you do see like your students or even like your son or daughter being a little bit withdrawn, like just pushing them to be a little bit more comfortable, and then it takes time.
Well, that's actually a characteristic of a 7th and 8th grader. I mean, my entire first 7 years of my career was in middle school. And if you have a 7th or 8th grader, they love school, they love being social, but they also love to act like they don't love it, right?
Because it's almost like it's so crazy. Like if someone is participating, right, and then there's like a few, then they're like, oh, okay, it's cool to participate. But like it depends. Like they literally fill out the vibe of a room or fill out a vibe of a meeting for sure.
If you are a middle school parent, they definitely are affected by their peers in a major way more than any other age level, because this is like, they're no longer the little kid identity in elementary school. They're like middle school, but they're not high school. And if the peer group is doing it, they're more influenced by that because they're not really grounded in who they are. They're like discovering that, right?
Yeah.
So it's funny that you both have like interest. I mean, Tony, are you an 8th grade or 7th grade teacher?
So I work with different grades. So I work with some 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So I definitely see the perspective there. But I definitely see the differences where I do work with 6th grade a lot as well. In the 6th grade, definitely like cameras on. They're still babies, like, oh, I want to share and all that. Where in 7th grade, it still happens, but sometimes you have to set that expectation a little more. But I know something with cameras that we did before the year started is we kind of reach out to families, and we don't ever want to say, oh, this camera has to be on, but 95% of parents, when we asked, oh, do you want camera on or not? They said, we want camera on. There were a few parents that said, oh, I don't want their camera on, and there were also a few parents too that said, oh, I'm not sure about the camera. And we went over, oh, you can do the background feature where it's just their face. They don't have to see what's going on behind. But I know I'm fortunate that I have a teacher's assistant in class with me at all times. And she's keeping track of who has camera on. She keeps participation data. So I know we set that expectation before the year that whatever your family says about your camera is what's going to happen. So if your family says camera on, we're going to hold you accountable. If you're not following those expectations, we're definitely going to reach out, let them know. But that's something that we wanted to reach out to families before, just to see their perspective, because families will have different ideas about the camera and its importance and all of that.
Is that a norm for schools to give families that option?
So my school didn't. I feel like that's a great idea. But then there's also that piece of parents that work from home or that go to work. And so it's like that student's doing work along with watching siblings. So I think the idea is amazing. And I think it depends on the demographic you serve and the students you serve. If that is an option, I think that's great. I didn't even think about doing that. But I also know that like sometimes in middle school, like 7th, 8th, like what the parent wants and what the student wants is totally different. And definitely with virtual, like I feel like in the classroom, it's easier sometimes to see triggers or see things that might push a student. And when you're virtual, like it's harder to see like, is this going to push the student to the point where they're going to shut down? So I've been a little bit lenient. That's why I go into breakout rooms, or this morning, because it was like our office hour day, I was like, you guys turn on your cameras for like 5 seconds. And as soon as I say your name and I see it, you can turn it off. So they started like, you can notice they started seeing other people. So they turn it on, like fix their hair. I'm like, good, you can put your camera off. So I'm just like trying to like, give them a little room to warm up to it, but it all depends on the students that you serve.
Well, given that middle schoolers thrive on social environment, how are you building community I mean, I hear like giving them options is one, but like what else are you doing to build community?
I know a cool activity that we did is we had students do like an about me slide. So it was first assignment of the year. It was just, there was no writing at all. It was what are your favorite foods, movies, video games, that kind of stuff. And then we didn't make students present, but we made the slides available to the class. And then we had a quiz on that. So students had the chance to maybe for 30 minutes go in and study, okay, whose favorite movie is this or whose favorite video game is that? And we did a Kahoot where it was every kid had a question and we went through and kind of students in the chat like, oh, I also like this movie, or I also play this video game. What's your username, or whatever it is, or I also have a dog or cat, whatever. So I think that was a cool activity that another teacher had that idea, and I thought that was cool, and it worked out well. And then this Friday we did kind of a fun Friday. So for students that showed up on time to all their meetings, they turned in all their work. We had a fun Friday where the math science teacher, she put on Disney Plus for whichever students wanted to get together, watch a movie after school was over. And then I did Fortnite with students who wanted to do that. So it was a cool opportunity and kids were definitely motivated throughout the week. We're like, okay, if this assignment's not in, you won't be at the fun Friday. And it was cool for students just to have an hour where they weren't online doing work the whole time and they just had time to connect and just enjoy something together.
One thing that I did in my advisory, which I was a little hesitant about because I have 7th graders, is a scavenger hunt. And so I was like, okay, you guys, we're going to do a scavenger hunt. We're going to find things in your home. And I was like, but your camera has to be on. And it was insane. Like the amount of things I was like asking them to get a quarter and a leaf. And they were like literally going behind them, pulling a leaf from a plant and like, I've got it. So I think sometimes as middle school teachers, you think that it's going to be too like elementary for them. I think like they're definitely going to surprise you. So I did scavenger hunt with my advisor and it was all boy one and they were like so pumped for it. I literally like was like, we're only going to do 10. And I think I went up to like 20 items and we ran out of time. I also do Kahoots. And so it's a mixture. Sometimes it's like content based. Sometimes I'll choose one. And then this last time, like I gave them opportunities. I'm like, oh, whoever like got the most in the scavenger hunt, like you get to choose the Kahoot. It's crazy how much students love Kahoot. And you can do content based, you can do it based on like an all about me, or you can do it like on like random topics like Netflix or movies or TV shows. So I think doing games with them in the beginning of class or even like on a Monday and then a Friday, like what he said, like getting them pumped for it and like motivated is really going to be important.
I'm wondering, I know that parents have been messaging me. Parents, if you have any questions, you can DM me or put it on the YouTube series and I read them. And some questions that I've gotten in my DMs are, what about new students? Like a student that is brand new to your school, I think a lot of parents have reservations or they're just worried about them making friends or building community. Are you doing anything for those types of students or do you have any ideas on what you teachers can do?
So I don't have any new students this year, but when I had new students last year, I'm like that extrovert person in general. So I'm like, I like to connect one-on-one with the student. So even if we're on a virtual learning platform, it's like, get them in a breakout room or meet with them before class and just get to know them. And then if you have relationships with other students in the class, I always have them say, hey, like this is a new student, like I'm gonna put them in your group, make them feel comfortable. So I don't wanna put it all on the teacher, but I do feel because we're in this really like different world that it's really important to get to know that new student first, get to know the parents' experience from their schools, and try to pair them with a student that has similar interests. And like I feel like for me, like I'm fine with telling my class or smaller groups like, hey, like this person's new, like can you help them with this assignment? And as long as you're really open with the group, like, and you pair them correctly, I think it'll be a really positive thing. But also checking in with a new student like, hey, how's it going? Like, do you need any help? Like, do you have any questions? But definitely checking in with that new student, especially with this virtual world that we're in.
Yeah, I think for me, I know the school I'm at has a very high retention rate. So there's no new students either. So students have been with each other 6-7 years. But I would say when I have had new students in the past, like I said, I coach sports, and every time that there's a new student, they're having trouble making friends, I tell the parents, sign them up for a club, a sport, even if it's for a week and they never play that sport again, they will make friends. And I've seen it time and time again where that works. So I think that I know for us, we haven't launched it yet, but in September, we're going to do some kind of programming, even though we don't have sports, where we can maybe watch a game together or do activities together or learn more about the sport. Or I know the art teacher is going to do an art club or film club. So I think schools definitely need to do that, because for new students, in my experience, the best way is definitely, I know we've seen on TV movies, the terrible example where you walk into a new class and the teacher introduces everyone and they're like, this is the new student, and that never works. But I think that for sure, schools can't say, oh, clubs are going to be put on the back burner or all of that. So I think schools should do clubs, and those students that are new should sign up for every club they can, even if they're not super interested, just because they will make a friend or friends in that club, in my experience.
Yeah, I actually like that suggestion. If you're a teacher listening, it sounds like what I'm hearing from you is don't be afraid to have unstructured time. Like, hey, I just want to invite you 10 minutes before class to watch this Disney movie for 10 minutes, or stay afterwards to play Fortnite. Like, I think what I'm hearing from you, Tony, is it's in those 10, 15, 20 minutes that community is built and authentic conversations is happening, right? I appreciate that. I'm wondering, do you have a suggestion that you would try? Say you did have like 5, 10 new students in your class. Like, does anything come to your mind about what you would try?
I think, I know for us, we have small group time built in our schedule. And the first 2 weeks we didn't, but next week we are. And I know our principal told us later on in the year, this will be content small group, but now you just said make some strategic relationship small group where you're meeting with 7 students a day, and it shouldn't be about levels, reading, math. It should just be however we think best, like maybe a student that is shy with some students that are a little more outgoing. But I think that in the beginning of the year, especially that small group time, which I'm sure a lot of schools have, could just be relationship time where it's not 30 kids on a Zoom. Kids are much more likely to talk, especially if they're new. I think if there's 4 or 5 kids, then when kids see 30 kids on a call, it's definitely nerve-wracking to share, especially if they're new, I'm sure.
Something that comes to mind, and I did this before when I was at the elementary level, is having like lunch bunches or lunch dates. So one thing that I do is I give surveys to my students like throughout the months and find out what their interests are. So I think if you do have a few new students, like pull like a Google form, have all your students fill it out with their interests, pull the new students that you have that have interest with other students, and do like a lunch bunch date on Zoom or Google Meets, whatever you use. And you can do like categories or Pictionary, like do some kind of fun interactive game where it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to have a conversation. They're just interacting in a fun way.
I appreciate that. I can see like the all about me slides and then putting them in small group to like find connections. I like that. And I think if you're teaching in a middle school, please take the time to do that. Like my niece is going to a brand new middle school. And the first thing I thought was like, how is she gonna make friends? Like she pretends like she doesn't care. Like it's fine, it doesn't matter. And to me, I'm like, I know she cares, and I know that being apathetic is like a characteristic of middle school. So I'm just kind of like, oh, teachers, do something to like build community, because they thrive on that. And it also makes me think another characteristic that I remember is self-esteem. And I'm seeing myself on camera right now. So I'm just imagining how they may struggle with self-esteem, right? Like, and why they also might have their cameras off. So how would we support some of that internal work that typically happens through either SEL or through a practice that you might try virtually?
So on Zoom, they do offer like a polling feature, which I really liked. So I did that today with my 7th graders of just like, how did this week go? Was it meh? Was it okay? But I got to see my friends. Was I happy? So I think even putting those things in that are anonymous, like they get to share their feelings or how it's going without everyone knowing. And I think that's really big with like middle schoolers. Like they low-key want to tell you, but they don't want other people to find out that they told you how they were feeling. So finding ways that you can get them to express things anonymously, like through a poll, through a survey. I've used something called Pear Deck, so they can write directly on a slide, like interactively. And you can show like, oh, these are what some students shared that they were feeling or how this has affected them. And no one knows who shares it. So they're more prone to be more honest about it.
Yeah, I think for sure. I know we've done like circle. I know we've done like restorative justice trainings at the school. So we've the students have been used to circle for years now, and teachers have that expectation. So I think circles can happen virtually as well. And just like in circle, the teacher models that vulnerability. So I think when the students see that you model that vulnerability, I know we did a lesson in the beginning just talking about like dedicating our year to one person, and all the students pick one person that's been supporting them, that has always been pushing them. And we kind of, obviously students can pass if they don't want to share, but myself, the teacher's assistant shared, and then students start sharing. And once a few brave students share, then more students start sharing. But I think that was a cool activity just to kind of talk about how this year is different, and it's going to be challenging, but there's awesome opportunities for this year. But I think just taking time to dedicate their work this year to one person was a good activity to kind of ground us, to get us set for the year.
And parents, if you don't know, a circle means it's literally just that. And it's based off of different types of training, counsel or SEL, and they literally sit in a circle, and it's intentional time to talk about, and you'll hear all a theme in all the videos, all the YouTubes I'm doing around social emotional learning. Like if we don't have them talk about how they're feeling and naming that, then they feel like they're the only ones feeling that way. And it's a good way to build connection. And I did wonder how you would do a circle because it's virtual. So that's interesting because you can't really circle the Zoom, but I guess the sentiment is there.
Mm-hmm. No, it's true. Yeah, usually we have students type, like if they were ready in the chat box, they would type ready, and definitely giving plenty of time to think. I know just like in class, it's tempting to call in those first two students who share, but kind of giving students a minute to sit on that question and think, okay, who's one person you want to dedicate your year to and why? And just taking a minute for that to settle. Maybe two students pick ready and you wait, and then more students pick ready, and then students can just type in the chat to let us know that they're ready, and then also build the habit too where students can maybe call in another student. I know in circle, it's not just the teacher calling on someone. I think the whole point of the circle is that normally in a classroom, the teacher's in front, all the students there, we're talking back and forth. The circle, everyone's in an equal space looking at each other. So I think setting the expectation, just like a circle where students are calling on each other, passing it off to one another is good. And it can be done virtually with a little practice for sure.
No, that's great. I do appreciate that, and that you're trying to build intentional community. I'm wondering, before we started recording, you were saying that you've had some students that are dealing with some heavy personal issues and situations. And so parents are contacting you, and you really appreciate that because now you understand that the student and how much to push them, and you're being accommodating. So I'm wondering, what else can we as teachers do to support families that you're hearing from the families that you would want teachers and families to know?
I know one thing we did this year is we're having platicas at our school with the families, where once every 2 weeks, the whole year, we're going to meet with families in a particular grade level. So the families know that every 2 weeks, we're going to meet, and we just ask 3 questions. What's working? What can we do better? What questions do you have? So it's a time literally where we're not telling the parents anything, and we let parents know, if you're working during this time, send us a question beforehand and we'll talk about it and we'll record it for those that can't make it. But every 2 weeks for the whole year, we're going to ask those 3 questions. What's working? What could be better? Because parents also see that perspective. Oh, I see that my kid, you might think they're focused, but they're actually had this under the desk, or they were looking here, or this lesson was awesome. Because definitely, when I was training to be a teacher, I was a teacher's assistant first, and the teacher that I work with, she said, teach like students' families are in the room, but now we are literally teaching and students' families are in the room. A lot of times you don't realize, and a mom will call me like, oh, that was a great lesson today. I'm like, I didn't see you there, but you were there clearly. But I think that's never been more true than now, for sure. But yeah, I think having that 2 weeks, and parents, when we had the first meeting, and they said, every 2 weeks we're gonna do this? We said, every 2 weeks, because things are gonna come up, and parents give us great feedback about things that we can switch up moving forward.
One habit, and I think it should happen regardless of virtual learning, is reaching out to parents before they reach out to you. I do like to have kind of like a roster. And so throughout the first like month, it's like, I want to try to get in contact with parents and just like check in with them, see how's everything going. Cause I sometimes feel that parents have pride, right? Like they don't want the teacher to know this is happening in their home or their lives. And so I think once you kind of set that tone of like, hey, I just want to see how everything's going. Let me know how it is. And sometimes it opens up a floodgate, you know, like last spring I had like families texting me, letting me know everything that's happening. And if they weren't able to come to class or they were turning in an assignment late. So I think definitely reaching out and forming those relationships, which we should be doing anyways as educators, definitely allows parents to feel comfortable so that if something does happen, they know like, oh, you know, this teacher reached out. I'm just gonna let her know this is happening because we've already built that relationship early on in the year.
That's beautiful. And you have about 80 to 100 kids. How many kids do you have?
I think we have like 60-ish kids.
Okay, 60
Yeah.
kids. Okay.
Yeah.
But that's still a lot of kids. It's a lot of time, and I really appreciate that dedication. I think a closing question that I have to you is, what supports do you feel like parents can give their child at home, their middle school child at home during this time?
I think supports are definitely just encouragement and curiosity as well. I think, and that's saying as teachers as well, especially this year, approaching things with curiosity. This assignment wasn't done, or your teacher messaged me and said you weren't super focused during this time. I think curiosity. I think some kids, even with their families, are maybe a little more stressed than they realize. I know, like Ashley was saying, with surveys, sometimes a kid might seem fine, and in their survey, they're saying, I'm super worried about my family. I don't know if they're going to get sick or not. I've been super worried this whole time, and they might put up a front that everything's fine. So I think definitely encouragement and just curiosity, and just setting aside time where kids are on the computer a lot. I think setting aside time where you're sitting down and doing something, whether it's if someone has the privilege of being anywhere close to some type of nature walk, or just sitting down and cooking a meal together, or sitting down playing a board game together. I think getting that time away from the screen has never been more important, because students, I think when virtual learning started in the spring, it was kind of emergency mode and kids were getting office hours. But now I know in the first 2 weeks when kids are online from 8 to 2, yes, they have some breaks in between, but they need that time to decompress at the end of the day. So I think, yeah, curiosity and giving them time away from the screen and as much encouragement as they can.
I would say just having a lot of patience with their students, and knowing that the teachers, like, I'm pretty sure are giving them a lot of time. I know with middle schoolers, they have a ton of classes. So normally they're in a school, right? And they've got to go to their locker, and then they've got to like say hi to their friends or use the restroom and get to their class on time. But now it's this like world of like, I have to find the right link to go to my meeting, and then I have to make sure I'm getting the time right, and like, am I in the right class? So I think just being really patient with them and supporting them with making schedules. So I was giving suggestions with my students, like if they have a phone, and I do it as a teacher, I have literally like every time my block is supposed to end, an alarm goes off because I don't want them to be late to their next block. Or they can like literally like spend time making a calendar or like a schedule of like, this is the time. So I think being patient and offering ways to help them so that they feel more successful coming into virtual learning, and not being super overwhelmed, even though middle school is overwhelming.
Right. That's so good. I want to assure you, parents, it's not easy to be a parent right now of a child that's going to school, especially a middle schooler. Like, they try to pretend like everything's okay, or they don't care. That is a typical attitude. And if you don't see that with your child, wow, like, that's beautiful. And that's definitely not what we were used to seeing in middle school. However, still take the time to check in on them. Still take the time to ask them how they're doing, or to normalize having emotions that are frustration, sad, uncertainty. But first, take care of yourself, parent. Remember, you are enough, and everything we're doing is in service of you all. And if you learned one thing from today, then I did my job. And so I hope that this helped today. I hope listening directly to these amazing educators. And don't think I asked them to be in the same home together. They're actually engaged to be married. They just both happen to be teachers. So I was like, let me get two amazing middle. I wouldn't risk you all like that. But I just want to say thank you for all you do, and thank you for taking the time to communicate this to the families of Los Angeles and whoever is watching this today.
Of course, we loved being here.
Thank you for having us.
All right, bye families. Until next time.
I will see you.